In really troubling news, the United States population size has run flat this year with the COVID pandemic, making the number of states in which more people died than was born come to 50%. Previously, only 5 states had that happen. And why this is really bad is because a constantly growing population means that there is a constantly growing demand for goods and services within a country, and that means that you can predict that there will be a constant, healthy economic growth. Obviously, you don't want a giant boom in population. That's the kind of thing that you see in developing countries. You want to have a population growth just over replacement. So that would look like 2.1, 2.2, 2.3 children per family, per man and woman couple. And you've seen countries that have had their population slow down face tremendous economic problems. One of the best examples of this would be Japan. Japan has an extreme anti-immigration policy, which has, as their population has aged and as their population has become more advanced, they did not have enough children to replace those who are dying, which means that they have no prospects for economic growth outside of exporting things to other parts of the world. This has tremendously decreased their ability to be a power on the world stage. China is actually facing a similar problem due to their genius one-child policy that they implemented, which punished families for having more than one child. Now, this is something that people on the environmental spectrum think is a really good thing because, yes, it is incredibly environmentally taxing for a person to live in the United States. For somebody to live in poverty in other parts of the world, it's actually not that bad for the environment just because they don't consume that much while they are alive. But somebody in the United States with a high standard of living, even somebody in the United States with a low standard of living here has an incredibly high standard of living when you compare them to the rest of the world. They consume a lot of resources and they produce a lot of waste. So it's a good thing from the environmental perspective. However, from the functioning of the United States and for our ability to continue to be a world power, this is incredibly concerning. And in fact, one of the only good things when you look at the current situation with the United States and China, where the United States and China are teeing off as both vying for that world power status, the predominant power status. One of the only things the United States has going for it is that it has the population growth that China has stopped seeing, which means that as China's population ages, they're going to have more old people to take care of, and they're going to have less young people to, 1, produce things in the economy, and 2, consume, because your prime consumers are people in their young adult life. They're the people who are buying houses. They're people who are having kids who need to buy a lot of things, which really keeps your domestic economy churning. If the United States continues this trend and either does not allow in enough immigrants to have our population continue to grow, or does not have a population here at home who has the desire to have enough kids to see our population grow, we will have similar problems to China, as well as Japan, as well as Europe. Most of the industrialized world has seen their population slump. We have been able to avoid that problem, and that's one of the brightest marks for our future as a country, as well as our great geographical position and natural resources, and of course just the fact that we are one of the most technologically advanced nations and that we pioneered much of the industrial and technological revolution that modernized the world. However, if we continue to see this population decrease after COVID, we could easily, as a nation, watch that advantage drain away as we have to spend more of our resources taking care of our old people than we are able to produce with our domestic economy being driven by our young people. And that's why I think it is a little bit ridiculous. One of the conservative senators today, I forget who, proposed a bill to put a 10-year moratorium on immigration. This, to me, shows a real lack of knowledge of the importance that demographics plays to the future of a nation. If we were to impose a moratorium on immigration that would prevent our population from growing, that would have extreme economic consequences. So while you think about policies like that, understand that demographic growth is key to having an economic future. And while we need to balance that with continuing to make improvements as to how we get our energy, how we deal with our waste, and how we interact with the world around us, as to not completely destroy the earth, if we want to have a strong United States for our whole lifetimes, me as somebody in my young 20s, and then for my kids' whole lifetime, we need to ensure that we do not see our population flatline. And so we can either have enough kids by having a good enough economy here that will actually allow people to feel like they can have kids that they will be able to raise properly, or we can let in enough immigrants to ensure that there is something that is keeping our economy churning and that prevents us from having the flat line of Europe, Japan, and maybe China in the near future.